And his mistress are finally sentenced for the murder of his wife 6 years ago. Michael Walker and Ailsa Jackson learned their fate today in federal court. Our Lynn Kawana was there.
The judge pointed out that even though it was Ailsa Jackson who wielded the knife that killed Kathy Walker, it was Michael Walker who organized the murder, and that's why he got a longer sentence. 40-year-old Michael Walker was sentenced to 35 years, more than the recommended sentence for second-degree murder. 29-year-old Ailsa Jackson got 30 years, the low end of the recommended sentence. Walker manipulated Jackson into killing Kathy Walker in 2014. He left a key outside their home while he maintained an airtight alibi. He was at work at Tripler Army Medical Center. Jackson suffered from mental illness and schizophrenia. She described stabbing Kathy Walker as she slept, then asking Mrs. Walker if she forgives her. She said Kathy Walker answered yes before dying. Family and friends of the victim spoke in court today, saying they too forgive and are satisfied with the judge's sentences.
We got something. They're not walking free. And then after this life, they have to answer to the Lord for their souls. We do forgive them. But we definitely are okay with what went on today.
Michael Walker did address the family of his deceased wife, saying he was sorry. Michael Walker was also convicted of child porn charges as well as prostitution in a military court-martial. That sentence will run concurrently with his sentence here. Reporting from federal court, I'm Lynn Kawano, Hawaii News Now.
Hello and good morning, everyone. You are live with King Sigma this morning, February 15th, 2020. I hope everyone has had a good week. I hope you woke up refreshed this morning. This story came to us straight from Hawaii, and this will be case number 7 in the Surviving Bottom Shelf Brad series. there's some interesting details to this story that the news left out as usual. When I report these stories, there's always a more interesting backstory than the mainstream media is willing to share. And I wanted to shout out 76K for referring this story to me. I've been kind of behind the times when it comes to my bottom shelf Brad entries because there's so much that has been going on over the last few weeks. Now, people have been trying to get me to read this book called The Daughters of the Trade for the last year or so. And I'm happy to report my copy of The Daughters of the Trade will arrive sometime at the end of next week. Yes. Finally, I will have the full lens by which I can really analyze the historical context of these entries, right? So with the Surviving Bottom Shelf Brad series, as you know, my current thesis is that when the Swirl Mountain concubines do what they call leveling up, it usually means leveling into the bottom quarter of the U.S. white male dating pool. That's my contention. Shout out to Vision. He says, peace, King Sigma. Keep up the great work. Appreciate you, Vision. Thank you for your support and your ears and eyes. So yeah, that's been my contention, is that when these Swirl Mountain concubines do go after these Caucasian males, the super majority of the time, they're going to end up with a bottom shelf Brad, someone that suffers from some kind of mental illness, someone that is the least desirable amongst the females in their own population. And as we've seen through all the cases that I highlight, you know, you get like a lot of these dudes that are really, really deranged, man. You know, very, very deranged type of white dudes. And in this case, this is again, you know, we talk about the Swirl Mountain graveyard. And in this case, the white wife is the innocent victim, Catherine Walker. She's the victim of this demented love triangle between U.S. Army medic, bottom shelf Brad sicko Michael Walker, and his concubine, whose name was Alison Jackson. So that's definitely, you know, consistent with what my thesis has been since I started the series last summer. And I'm at the rate that it's going, I wouldn't be surprised if this Surviving Bottom Shelf Brad series hits about 25 before the end of the year. I would not be shocked at all. And so what stood out to me about the case being in Hawaii is that Hawaii only has a population of blacks in the range of around 3%, just under 3%. They have like the 11th lowest black population in the United States. And that's really something to think about. So you have this small population. And then, you know, one of the things that the Swirl Mountain concubines often say is that it's black men that are dating out and out here having sex with all these non-ADOS women, But then that's just not the case. And one of the arguments I've made is that it is true that black men have been marrying out at a higher rate. And we'll have the 2020 census data next December. But what they don't talk about is that when you study ghetto gaggers, when you study the dating information, it's actually the ADOS woman that is going after these white men at a much higher rate than black men are going after white, Asian, Latina, biracial women. This is a fact. This has been proven on Tinder. This has been shown on OkCupid, that black women put out the most Tinder messages and swipe with white men and Asian men, but they just are the least chosen. So that's where the real story is, that it's the fact that these women are going after white and Asian men and even Latino men at a higher clip than any black men are going after the women of those ethnicities, but they just don't get selected. And when they do get selected, it's mostly for ghetto gaggings, plantation slave sex. That's why you don't really see as many of them out in public with the women, but don't get it twisted. The ADOS woman is having a lot of sex with these bottom shelf Brads. Do not get it twisted. And I see it a lot in my city. You know, every once in a while you'll catch them late at night at the liquor store or out at the nightclub. You know, it's always in the after 6 p.m. type of situation that you'll catch them. So they're not marrying them, but they're actually having more sex than we black men are with non-ADOS women. That's a fact. And so what happens is that even if you take the Swirl Mountain Concubines argument that that we're the ones that are out here chasing after these white, Latina, and Asian women or whatever, then how do you explain how I have a backlog of entries into this series of murder, rape, mayhem, sexual trafficking, selling children, white men killing their biracial children, raping their daughters? I mean, come on. If that's the case, you're only making my argument even stronger that the tendency is for the Swirl Mountain concubines to date into the bottom quarter of the white male population. That only strengthens my argument. Because if you're saying that you have this high rate of murder and mayhem and assaults and violence against black women, or in this case, against the white wife, who is the victim in this case, then that just makes it stronger that there's a higher percentage of chances of dysfunctional death and destruction when you bring together bottom shelf Brad. And in this case, they said that this black concubine was mentally ill. She was a victim killer. That's how the news media tried to play it. So that's going to get, when I get into the judge, you'll understand why I thought that was interesting, the way that the news tried to report on that he made her do it. She didn't have free will. That was a grown ass woman. You're talking about the most educated, the most independent, and the most loyal women on the planet over the last 500 years. Hear them tell it. Isn't that their spiel? The spiel from the Black Girl Magic Feminists is that they are the most educated, they are the most independent, they are the most loyal. Every woman wants to be them. Every woman wants to look like them. No one can compete with them. But it seems like every time they get in trouble, the accountability goes out the window, and their supporters and those that purposely uplift these women in order to control the black family and the black neighborhoods, they allow this stuff. They get behind it because it's important that they keep the American black woman on that Democratic plantation and voting with their family destructive policies and their anti-black misandry. That's really what it boils down to. But I guess I take the different side of the argument. I take these women at their word. They say that they're the most educated, the most loyal, the most beautiful. Everybody wants to be them. No one's more independent than them since the Columbus landed in the Western Hemisphere, I guess. That's the argument they say. Vision says, shout out to Game Changer 0010. Thanks for the content. Yeah, the brother Game Changer is doing the God's work over there. Y'all need to really check out his Survivor Scrolls. He's actually broken this down to scrolls, his thoughts on what's going on in Black America and the relationship between Black people, Black women, Black men, Black children, and their parents or whatever. So definitely check him out. So that's what you're getting. You're getting a lot of Black men actually doing a digital thesis. And that's why I keep saying that we're at a historical moment, because we're able to present an argument, present the case in real time. This isn't some, you're sitting up in the ivory tower, you're reading a book, you're writing a paper and going before the academy. No, we're going before the academy, the media, and the public, because everyone listens to these streams, from the academics to the news reporters to regular common people like you and I. So it's actually harder to present an argument when you have to go before everybody, not just the elites. So what has happened historically before the advent of and the rise of this internet was that you went before a committee, a small, powerful elite group on campuses, and you made an argument. They approved it or didn't approve it or whatever. We actually bring our argument before the people and the academics and the media and the enemies of Black men. So you have to be on point when you bring these arguments. So I think what we do is much harder. So getting back to the case, so the U.S. Army medic, who I call a certified bottom shelf Brad sicko, Michael Walker, he conspired with his Black concubine lover to kill his wife, Catherine Walker, on November 14th, 2014. Now, Michael Walker ended up being sentenced on February 10th of this year to 35 years. Now, at the time that he did the murder, he was 35 years old, and he's now 40 years old. So, I mean, I think the average age for a white man is about 75. So he's almost guaranteed to die in prison. His co-conspirator, Alison Walker, the white male worshiping Black concubine, she was sentenced to 30 years. Now, she was 25 years old at the time of the murder, and now she's 29. So she'll probably get out with about a good 5 or 6 years left on her life. But what I thought was interesting when I first saw it, I'm like, wait, so he got more time for orchestrating the murder than she did for actually doing the killing? I knew there was something that wasn't right about that, right? So once I actually digged into the case, come to find out that, the woman who was the judge in the case, her name is Judge Mulway. She was nominated to the U.S. District Court for the District of Hawaii and the first Asian woman ever elected to the federal bench. She's currently the residing chief judge of the U.S. District Court for the District of Hawaii. And she was appointed in 1998 by former President Bill Clinton. Now, I bring that up because these things are important when you're looking at the judges, because the judge took on a very aggressive and assertive role in this case. She wanted to make sure that he got more time than she did. She went on record and said this. Now, she was a first wave baby boomer born in 1950. So one of the most important books that I've been pointing out to people is that you got to go back to The Sexual Contract, which was written by Dr. Carol Pateman in 1988. It's critical that you brothers read that book, or at least go listen to her speak on why she wrote it and how it was the introduction of third wave feminism. So, Judge Mulway being a first wave baby boomer, she would have been 38 years old the year that Sexual Contract came out. And she had a typical history of those women from that generation. She went to college, under the affirmative action policies that came about in the late 1960s and early 70s. Then she went on to attend Harvard Law School at a time when a lot of feminists were being very outspoken. They were looking up to people like Sandra Day O'Connor, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Those were like their heroes, and Dr. Carol Pateman. So you got to keep this stuff in mind, who these people are. So she was the judge in this case, and she put a lot of the onus on him. Whereas to me, I just see two criminal-minded and sick individuals that should have both got time. She was actually supposed to get life, okay? But the prosecutors cut a deal with her. She was supposed to get life. For what he was charged with, he was only supposed to get between 24 to 30 years. They went beyond what was norm for what his role was. But her role typically in Hawaii would have got a life sentence. But of course, when the heat got on her, she flipped, man. She flipped. So Raiders 48 Gates, he says, what's the name of the book? The name of the book is The Sexual Contract by Dr. Carol Pateman. It's critical that you read that because in that book, she makes the argument that things like chivalry, coverture, and the church all conspired against women to force them into a contract they never agreed with. And what the third wave and the fourth wave feminist goal was to shred the sexual contract. And now that's why you're getting this blowback all throughout the West from men that are saying, okay, well, there's no contract and it hasn't been in place for at least the last 30 years. We're going to go create our own contract somewhere else with our own standards and our own obligations, duties, and rewards. That's what's going on. And that's how it kind of like climaxed with Me Too. And it's interesting that I'm doing this stream because the Harvey Weinstein, the face of Me Too, he actually, in his trial that's going on in New York, they had the closing arguments on Friday. So they're suspecting that by next week, we might get a decision. But because of how powerful he is, I don't know. I'm actually thinking that he's going to get a hung jury. I know you guys are like, no way. They got R. Kelly, they got Bill Cosby, they got Cuba Gooding Jr., all these black men. Ain't no way he's going to get off. I'm saying it here. I think that the Harvey Weinstein case ends in a hung jury and he walks away. I really believe that. But that was kind of like the climax of what fourth wave feminism had come to, is with the Me Too movement. I think it ends in 2020, and that downward decline really started in 2016. And it's just going to go down and down from here as more and more men say, I'm going and looking out for my own interests. These women have made their decision. They don't want a contract. They want freedom and independence and the ability to be as promiscuous as possible. But they want to live off you, and they want you to pay for that lifestyle. Now, that's what men are rejecting. They're not saying don't go do what you want to do. Go be free, but you're going to pay for it. You're going to be accountable for it, not me and not the taxpayers. So the victim in this case, her name was Catherine Walker. She came from a very religious family, very religious woman. And that's going to make more sense as I go through some more of the facts of the case. And, Michael Walker, the husband, So he conspired with the Black Concubine to kill his white wife in their Honolulu home on a military reservation called Alia Manu out there in Honolulu. So this was all plotted. But, you know, he was a veteran of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and he had been assigned employment as a healthcare specialist at Tripler Army Medical Center in Honolulu. So he was, you know, living a middle-class Waldo lifestyle with a bottom-shelf Brad spirit. So, you know, Michael Walker and his Black widow concubine had met in September 2014 through a online dating service. And within 60 days or so, they had already, you know, got together and created this murderous plot to kill the wife. Now that's what hit me right there, because again, like I said in the opening, OkCupid and Tinder and all these online services have already put out the information that said that Black women are the ones reaching out to these white men, more so than Black men are reaching out to non-Black women. This confirms it. Audience, listen to what I said. They met in September 2014, and they committed the murder on November 14, 2014. Okay? Less than 60 days or so, they went from Lonely Hearts on Tinder, who he's a married man who had cheated on many women. And I'm going to get to that, because remember, one of the myths that come down from Swirl Mountain is that the white man is this loyal guy. He's this heroic figure. He's Mr. Rogers. He would never hurt nobody. He would never cheat on his woman. Nah. And they actually tell themselves this while they're in a role of a concubine. So you have the Swirl Mountain concubines. They say this while being in the situation when they're with a white dude who's married or in a relationship, and they're the concubine. But in their mind, that white woman don't exist. So even if he has a wife, or even if he has a girlfriend, even if he's a pedophile, even if he's a rapist, whatever, it doesn't matter because he's white. Okay? So that's really how they see it, is that the wife and the girlfriend don't exist. His criminal history don't exist. His economic status doesn't exist because he's white. That's all that matters. If he's white, that gives him genetic diplomatic immunity, period. And this is the case. So within 60 days, this independent, most educated, free daughters of the trade agreed to be an assassin for bottom shelf Brad. I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. So the duo scheme was to make the murder of Catherine Walker look like a burglary. So that was kind of like how they had planned it. So that, you know, it was going to be like a burglary. He was going to be off at work. She was going to come through. He was going to leave the key. He left the knife. And then she was going to murder him. And that's how it kind of played out. So they arrested Michael in his Honolulu home. The FBI, this was the Hawaii FBI that arrested him. And that was on November 4th, 2015. So he didn't even get arrested until a year after they secured the indictment. Think about that. He wasn't arrested until a year later, literally almost a year later, because the murder had occurred on November 14, 2014. But he wasn't arrested until November 4th, 2015, because they had to go through the indictment. But you got to wonder, if it was a Black man that was involved in something like that, I wonder, would he have been arrested a year later? So during the jury trial, the jury was shown texts and emails between Michael Walker and Alison Jackson. So Michael had let Alison know early on, and again, they were only dealing with each other for like 60 days before the murder happened. So, you know, he let her know that, hey, I have a desire to get rid of my wife, but he was too cowardly to do it himself. So he was unwilling to commit the crime himself, and he thought it would be too obvious. So he needed someone dumb enough, thirsty enough, even sicker than he was to carry out this heinous crime against his sleeping wife, because he plotted it so that she would be asleep when they killed her. And he found his sick soulmate there on online dating in another Swirl Mountain concubine assassin, you know. And the reason I put this out is because my whole thing is that I'm against Black misandry. And part of Black misandry is the propaganda and the myths that they create around us as Black men, as if we're the ones that are doing crimes all the time, that we're the ones that are out here being bad to women. No. That thing cuts across racial lines, gender lines, and class lines. And it's important that we highlight what the news won't highlight and give our own spin on things and give our own narrative. So that's really what it's about. So when people ask me, hey, it's not a big deal. No, it actually is a big deal, because Jason Roger Pope was a big deal. He never went mainstream, even though he is involved in one of the biggest and most heinous forms of racial terrorism probably ever recorded in American history. So it's important that we as Black men, that we call out the things that actually harm our image, and that we show in comparison, okay, well, you said that the Black male does this and that. Well, look at what the white male is doing. And eventually, maybe we'll get somewhere with these conversations and people will stop attacking based on our racial gender. So it's about fighting back against racial genderism, what we call misandry. So, they were showing like the jury different conversations. So they had in-person conversations, text messages, emails, and all these things were subpoenaed by the prosecution. So they showed it to the jury, showed it to the judge on the court. And, Michael, his motive was that he confessed his deepest desire was to have his wife murdered because he couldn't get her to divorce him, because she was very religious, came from a very religious family. But because of different financial concerns, and he didn't want to lose, get hit with the alimony and things like that. He also had like different kinds of insurance policies out. He was going to get almost $500,000 if his wife was murdered. That was the motive. So there was like a life insurance policy out there for about $500,000 if his wife ended up dead. So that was the motive right there, that money. He didn't care about that Swirl Mountain concubine. She was just a means to that $500,000. And we've seen this throughout this series in the 7 cases that the bottom shelf Brad, 9 times out of 10, he ain't even concerned about sex with the Black concubine. That's a given to him. Because anything that's given too easily, you don't appreciate it. So that's he don't even care about sex. He probably watches her have sex or something like that with herself most of the time. They use them as a medium by which to do something else. And in every case that's been the case, we done seen bank robbers in this situation. We've seen people, white bottom shelf Brad use these Black women to get elected to office. We've seen it. We've seen them use to get closer to kids. And we saw with Jason Roger Pope that he was using Black women, in his own words, to pass AIDS to Black men, doing racial terrorism against Black men through the Black woman. See what I'm saying? So in this case, again, and it's a consistent theme in this series, using the concubine to get to the bag in this situation. But I don't know why people don't understand that everything that we do here online is monitored by the companies that run YouTube, Google. It's nothing for them, the Department of Defense, the FBI, the CIA, to get all your information if you've done some kind of crime. So, I mean, it didn't take anything to get these people. So in one of the November 2014 emails presented to the court, it highlighted Alison Jackson's enthusiasm to kill the wife in order to remove her from the love triangle. That's what stood out so much about it. Now, remember, he only knew this woman less than 60 days, but she was already enthusiastic enough because, again, we talk about over here that they will try to climb Mount Everest. They will swim the Atlantic Ocean. They will hike through the Serengeti. They will walk the Dead Sea in order to get to that white seed. That's a consistent argument that we've made over here. And I use these cases to prove if I'm right or wrong. I'm telling you, man, there's nothing that the Swirl Mountain concubine will not do to get that white seed and get that white validation, period. And it has nothing to do with us as Black men. It's a relationship that they've had for the last 500 years. So what I'm doing, now that I got the Daughters of the Trade book coming in next week, I'm going to take a week or two off to just sit down, break down the Daughters of the Trade, and then look at a lot of their references. And I'm going to come back way sharper in this series when I come back in March, because I've been holding off on reading that one. I just haven't had the time, but it's coming next week. I'm going to take a week or two, and I'm really going to dig into this history that I didn't know about. So they have a different contract, a different relationship than the Black man has with the rest of white society in America and in the West. We have different relationships in the ways that we interface with the white society. Just that simple at this point in 2020. So she had said in one of the emails, the anticipation is exhausting. The thrill is faltering. I'm growing impatient and tired, and I'm ready for action to kill your wife. This is her in an email presented to the jury. Michael Walker, in his reply to her, said, the sooner the better. So I noticed that in all the text messages, like she's the one doing all the talking about how she's gonna do this kill. How should I do it? He's just giving like little one-liners, you know, things like the sooner the better. The key will be there. You know, it was, you know, it was interesting how enthusiastic she was about doing the murder. And so they had agreed that Michael would leave a key near the back door of the home while he was at work in the emergency room at the medical center. So around midnight on November 14, 2014, Alison entered the Walker's home with a key that was left at the back door by Michael Walker. So I guess there was a knife in the kitchen, and you know, she grabbed the knife. Then she went upstairs because, you know, Catherine Walker was asleep upstairs. Now, she stabbed Catherine Walker while she was asleep. And so Catherine Walker woke up to being stabbed. And, you know, they basically, something that stood out to me was the fact that when she was stabbing him, stabbing the victim, she had asked the victim, "Do you forgive me?" I'm like, what? So she's in the house. The key was left by the husband. She gets the knife. She goes upstairs while she's stabbing the wife awake because she was asleep at first. So she awoke to being stabbed. This deranged Squirrel Mountain concubine asked the wife, and this is all on the trial transcript, "Do you forgive me?" Now, she claims to the court that she forgave him. She said, yes. Come on, man. And you got the prosecutor, you got the judge, and this is what really threw me off. Oddly enough, so she had told the prosecutors that she was stabbing the white victim, and she said, "Do you forgive me?" And she said, yes. But what tripped me out is that, you know, I like in criminal trials, sometimes they will bring the family of the victim up there to talk about, you know, how they feel about what happened, to go on record. Surprisingly, because of how religious this white family was, they actually said they believed her that Catherine would say that she forgives the killer because she was so religious. So that family actually said that they supported the judge and the prosecutors giving a lower sentence to Alison, the Black Concubine. They actually supported because she was going to get life. But the family themselves said that as Christian people, religious people, that they forgave her. I was like, wow, I don't believe you. I'm supposed to believe a killer that you're sitting up there killing someone, and in the middle of the killing, you say, hey, you just stop. Hey, do you forgive me for this killing and coming into your house and, you know, having sex with your husband and all this stuff? She was like, the wife said, yeah. And then she just went back to killing her. Come on, man. So, you know, so after the murder that was staged to look like a random burglary, Alison actually fled to Indiana. And that's where they arrested her. And then they sent her back to Honolulu and incarcerated her until her trial. But she actually left to Indiana, and they were going to connect later on. You see what I'm saying? So she avoided the mandatory life sentence by helping the prosecutors in the indictment against Michael. So, you know, she started squealing as soon as they got her in that room. They said, hey, you know, you're looking at a life sentence. What happened? All that. So I guess there is a higher power than their love for bottom shelf Brad. And that's the white man's law, as they call it, the white man's law. They fear that even more than anything else they fear. So I thought there was no higher power, but I guess there is a higher power. The only thing higher than their desire to climb Squirrel Mountain and to get that white seat and that white validation is actually being put in that white man's prison. So I guess that's the higher power to them. So, you know, what she did, she sat down with them. They were using all these code words in their exchanges to plot the murder. And she just gave it all to him. And, you know, in a subsequent interrogation of Michael, this is where it got really interesting to me, because one of the myths is that these are not criminals and pedophiles and rapists, right? So in a subsequent interrogation, Michael admitted to having multiple other affairs, and he admitted to being a sex addict. So he had been cheating on his wife with multiple women for a long time. And you saw in the clip, in the news clip, that his wife, good friend, was actually a black woman. And they were a part of like this very religious group, you know what I'm saying? So he admitted to being a sex addict and having multiple affairs on his wife. But he pinned the blame for stabbing on Jackson, said that she did it of her own choice. And so for me, what's important about that is that it kills the myth that Brad, Waldo, and Chad are these loyal, low sex drive saints, as the Squirrel Mountain Concubines tries to sell to these women out here who are vulnerable, who have low self-esteem, who have been hurt in the past, who come from fatherless homes. So they're selling this myth to these women that this is what the standard is, whereas it's not the standard. And you're going to get a lot of women hurt and killed out here. because the way that any man or woman should approach life is that you judge people based on their character, okay? You judge them by their character, not their race, not their gender and all this other shit, not how much money they got, but character is key. But they're telling these women, if he's white, everything else solves itself, okay? And every time I bring one of these cases, it's proven wrong and it's deadly. Someone ends up dead, someone ends up raped. Someone ends up being put in jail in all these cases. So, you know, the prosecutors are going through the case. They're looking up his old past records. And guess what we found out? Michael had also been found guilty of child pornography. Yeah. He had been found guilty by the courts of, child pornography charges that surfaced as they investigated and probed the murder case. And I'm thinking to myself, like, hold on. So you got a guy that's working as a health specialist and he's actually able to work in a hospital as a sex offender? Wow. Hey, brothers, do you think that you would be working in a medical health center in Hawaii as a registered sex offender or someone that got any kind of sex offense on your record? You think you'd be hired? I don't think so. I don't think so. So he was convicted of sexually abusing a child also. So not only did he have child pornography on his file, not only was he serial cheater on his wife, he was also convicted of sexually abusing an actual child too. Physically assaulting a child and wrongfully communicating a threat. So he had child abuse charges against him, and he was also convicted of physically assaulting a child and communicating threats to a child as well. But yet this guy is sitting up there, but he's actually sitting there in an Army medical center in Hawaii with a good job, that a healthcare specialist. The healthcare industry is one of the highest paying industries in America. So he can get a job with all that on his record. But I know highly qualified black men that I've met who just had an assault charge on the record and they can't get hired in corporate America or in the government. And they have degrees and they can't, because it's a violent crime or a crime against person. That's what they take the most serious, is violent crime and crimes against person. Maybe a low-level drug charge, they'll let you get through with that if there's no kind of violence. But if there's any level of violence and you're a black man, it's almost 9 times out of 10 in America, they're not going to hire you in no job like that. So again, genetic diplomatic immunity comes into play. So he was reduced in his rank because of these child pornography and the child sexual abuse. So he used to be a sergeant, but because of those charges, they demoted him to private, and he was dishonorably discharged and sentenced to 10 years in prison. According to the Army, that's what they said. But I guess he made a deal to get like probation. Now just think about that. So he was dishonorably discharged. He was demoted from sergeant to private, and he was going to get 10 years in prison, but he cut a deal where it was like probation, but he still got the job at the medical center as a healthcare specialist working in the emergency room. Okay. I mean, come on. So, you know, the father of Catherine said that they supported the 30-year sentence over the mandatory sentence. They went up there before the court and said, we forgive her. And this is that whole religious thing. It wouldn't have been me. And, you know, I just want to end this spiel on something that the judge said. So, you know, I told you guys about Judge Suzanne Ole-Mulway. And, you know, she said that she was going to make sure that Michael Walker did not get less than 35 years and that the woman would get less, even though she was the killer and typically she would get life. Here's what she said. Miss Jackson wielded the knife that killed your wife, Mulway said, addressing the former medic, Michael Walker. And that was a terrible, terrible deed. But it does appear to me that you were in control, that she did what she did because you wanted her to, and you knew she had mental health problems. I just want to know before I get off here, man, like, what does the chat think about what the judge said? I told you her history. She was appointed by Clinton. She's been on the bench since 1998. And now she's the chief judge of the U.S. District Court of Hawaii out there. But he got blamed for something that a grown woman did, even though they were co-conspirators and equal partners in this. And that's where I saw the whole feminism thing come in. So women can get away with anything. That's why I actually am starting to believe that as a man, it's a lot to fear out here, dude. Because if let's say like you're married to a woman and she kills you, the way that they've built this narrative against men in America is that she was abused or she had mental problems, just like in that case with Centonia Brown or whatever. I'm actually starting to believe that women can really get away with murder on any of us. I'm really starting to believe that, bro. Because what's to stop any woman from just, if something doesn't go the way that she wants it to do violence against you, like with the Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp. Look at how he got drugged in the mud by all of society. And then it was proven that she lied. And I'm not hearing anything from the major media on that. No one's talking about the fact that she got caught in a lie with many tapes of all the violence that she did against Johnny Depp. Has harmed his career, has ruined his image, cost him millions of dollars. But they go silent on that. You see what I'm saying? So there's been this narrative and this culture created where a man's life has no value, but a woman is to be believed in a culture that's supposed to promote due process. And this is what happens when you go too far in any direction. When you go too far in a gynocracy or in a patriarchy, you need balance. We need equal protection before the law. That's why you have due process. That's why you have a constitutional arrangement. They want it so that if you're a man and you're accused of anything, then you're guilty. That's what they want. And in this situation, the judge takes the side of the female killer against the dude that talked her into doing it. Even though typically in Hawaii, he would have got around 25 years because he didn't do the actual killing. She did the killing. This is the kind of culture that we've created. And then you have these Squirrel Mountain concubines that wonder why we have to tell this side of the story. It's crazy that they don't want us to tell that side of the story. They just want to have their narrative, and they want the media to have their black misandry narrative. But they do not want black men that can think for themselves, research for themselves, and work with other thinking black men to come to our own conclusions to have a voice. They want us to shut the fuck up, let these things keep going on because they like the arrangement. And I'm going to keep reporting on these stories until I feel that I've actually given enough substantial evidence to prove my thesis that when these Squirrel Mountain concubines go looking for bottom shelf Brad, that's who they most likely end up with. And usually it ends in disaster for them. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the chat real quick before I get off. But I just wanted to share case number 7 with you guys. I thought that Army medic Michael Walker and Allison Jackson and the victim Catherine Walker's story need to be told from the perspective of just a regular common black man who sits back and reads these headlines just like you do. But now we can talk about our perspective on it. We can see the misandry even in this case. We can see how these kind of narratives harm black men. You got a dude who was a convicted child pornographer, a convicted child abuser, dishonorable discharge, demoted, but he was still able to work in a hospital, man. I don't even know how that is possible with those kind of charges, working in a hospital and children being there and things. I don't know how they get these kind of deals, but genetic diplomatic immunity is powerful. So it's very critical that we black men give our spin on this because we will not be silenced anymore. And anyone that would try to protect one of these diabolical, bottom shelf Brad killers and rapists and pedophiles, you are a piece of shit. Anyone that will come out and say, man, why are you reporting on this story, man? You don't need to spread that message out there. He's going to prison. Let's not talk about it. Anyone that would protect Jason Roger Pope, Joe Morrissey, Michael Walker, and these kind of filth, you are filth just like them. You are just as much filth as he is, that you would actually try to silence black men from reporting on these stories at a time when you got everybody attacking black men, no matter how rich they are, no matter how low they are. We get attacked and blamed for everything. So again, that's case number 7. I thank you all for joining me. This is King Sigma, and I'm going to sign off. And you all have a great Saturday. And until next time, peace.